feel their needs in all that we do. For we do not represent ourselves, we represent them. Their lives are affected every day by climate change, majority of them women. Many of their lives are affected by lack of electricity, from a kid struggling to read with candles or lanterns, or the occasional street light in their neighborhoods, to a mother who straps her baby on her back, using fuel wood and charcoal to cook, yet exposing herself and her child to the effects of fumes that endanger their lives. So, the theme of our annual meetings, achieving climate resilience and a just energy transition, it's all about people. Africa is the least emitter of carbon emissions in the world, accounting for only 4% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Yet, the continent suffers disproportionately from the negative impacts of climate change, including increased frequency and intensity of droughts, cyclones, floods, compounded by desertification. Climate change is simply short-changing African economies. Africa suffers $7 to $15 billion per year in losses to climate change, which are projected to rise to $40 billion per year by 2030. Africa has no choice but to adapt to climate change that it did not cause. To support the continent in doing so, the African Development Bank has doubled its financing for climate to $25 billion by 2025. Without any doubt, the African Development Bank is the leader on climate adaptation in Africa and globally. The share of our climate finance dedicated to adaptation is 67%, the highest of all multilateral development banks, and I was particularly excited when UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon singled out the bank in the UN General Assembly last year that the bank is leading and others should follow. Your Excellencies, the bank and the Global Center on Adaptation, we are implementing what we call the African Adaptation Acceleration Program, or AAAP, with the goal of mobilizing $25 billion in climate adaptation financing for Africa. The bank is also supporting countries to insure themselves against extreme weather events through its Africa Disaster Risk Insurance Facility. Today, the facility is helping 9 countries to pay for insurance premiums to protect themselves and their populations from the effects of climate change. In Madagascar, our support of $4 million to pay for the full insurance of the country allowed it to get $12 million in payouts to compensate over 600,000 farmers when Cyclone Batsirai hit the country. Your Excellencies, we need more financing to ensure many more low-income countries against these extreme weather events. The bank is leading on securing the food supplies, Your Excellency, for Africa in the face of climate change. 6 years ago, with the approval of our board of directors, I launched the Feed Africa strategy of the bank. Our goal was to deliver climate-resilient agricultural technologies to farmers and to feed Africa. We are achieving incredible success. Our Feed Africa work has already benefited over 76 million farmers with access to improved agricultural technologies across Africa. Our flagship program, which we call Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, or in abbreviation TAAT or TART, has delivered climate-smart seeds to 12 million farmers in 27 countries in just 2 years. We are helping farmers to beat climate change. TAT delivered water-efficient maize to 5.6 million households in East Africa, an area hit by severe droughts 3 years ago. The drought was severe, but farmers secured their food supply with the water-efficient maize varieties. In Sudan, TAT financed the provision of 65,000 tons of heat-tolerant wheat varieties. That is seeds enough to fill 665 Airbus 380 aircrafts. If you take an Airbus 380 aircraft, the people in it, the cargo, and the fuel is 98.4 metric tons. So when I tell you 65,000 metric tons, what I'm telling you is think about 665 A380 Airbuses packed on a landing strip. That's what I'm talking about. Sudanese farmers grew the varieties on 187,000 hectares. In just 2 years, Sudan reduced its wheat import by 50%. We did the same in Ethiopia. TAT financed the provision of 45,000 tons of seeds of heat-tolerant wheat varieties to farmers in Ethiopia. The farmers initially started with 5,000 hectares of these heat-tolerant wheat varieties in 2018. They expanded to 167,000 hectares 2 years later. And by the end of this year, they have expanded it to 400,000 hectares. I was in Ethiopia just last week, and I was very honored to be conferred with a honorary doctorate by the Addis Ababa University. And I was having lunch with His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia. As I explained to him the 400,000, I was so excited about it. He leaned forward intently towards me. And I was wondering, why was it leaning forward intently towards me? He said, Akin, I was just waiting for you to stop because I wanted to tell you the following. And I quote him. Actually, Ethiopia's wheat production is now on 650,000 hectares. We harvested 2.6 million metric tons of wheat. Ethiopia did not import wheat this year. Next year, we will cultivate 2 million hectares on the wheat. And he concluded, we expect to export at least 1.5 to 2 million metric tons of wheat to Kenya and Djibouti. Incredible, simply incredible. Your Excellencies, we will not be talking about a looming food crisis in Africa if Russia did not invade Ukraine. To tackle the looming food crisis in Africa from Russia's war in Ukraine, the African Development Bank and the African Union Commission developed an Africa Emergency Food Production Plan. The $1.5 billion plan will be used to support African countries to produce food rapidly. The plan will produce 38 million metric tons of food. That will be 11 million metric tons of wheat. That will be 18 million metric tons of maize, 6 million metric tons of rice, and 2.5 million metric tons of soybeans. The total value of the additional production will be $12 billion US, So you can see with our investment of $1.5 billion to deliver $12 billion of food for the continent, that is a leveraging factor of 8 times. That's what we are as African Development Bank. We're a fantastic leveraging machine for money. The bank will deliver climate-resilient agricultural technologies at scale for 20 million farmers. I am delighted that my board of directors at the African Development Bank approved the $1.5 billion Africa Emergency Food Production Facility last Friday, May 20, 2022. I want my board of directors to stand. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you do every single day. This approval, which is landmark, follows a global convening by the bank that I helped to chair in partnership with the African Union Commission of the African Ministers of Finance, Ministers of the Economy, Ministers of Agriculture, African Development Finance Institution, United Nations agencies, developed countries from around the world, and of course, attended by my dear sister, Managing Director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, who gave a fantastic support behind us. We all agreed it is time to support Africa to produce its food. It is time to have food sovereignty in Africa. Food aid cannot feed Africa. Africa does not need bowls in hand. Africa needs seeds in the ground and mechanical harvesters to harvest bountiful food produced locally. Africa, Your Excellencies, must feed itself with pride. There is no dignity in begging for food. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank is also spearheading just energy transition for Africa. Since 2009, the bank has not funded any new coal projects. Not funding coal has now been formalized as a policy with our new energy policy approved by our board of directors. Africa has perhaps the world's largest potentials for renewable energy sources, especially for solar, for hydro, geothermal, and wind. The African Development Bank is implementing a $20 billion desert-to-power initiative in the Sahel to build 10,000 megawatts of solar power generation. These will provide electricity via solar for 250 million people and turn the Sahel into the largest zone for solar in the world. The bank plans to establish the Africa Just Energy Transition Facility, which will be used to support African countries to transition from heavy fuel oil and coal power plants to renewable energy, base load power systems. The bank is currently working with the government of South Africa in support of its efforts for just energy transition, for example. We are also working closely with the G7 countries to leverage their $8.5 billion financing promise for South Africa. Our approach at the African Development Bank will allow South Africa to raise $27 billion on the capital markets in support of its just energy transitions. And let me be clear, it will be able to do so without debt. As we look to energy transition, we must ensure 3 imperatives. First, we must ensure access and affordability to electricity. Second, there must be security of supply of energy. And third, gas must remain a critical part of the energy mix for Africa. Let me just be clear. Even if sub-Saharan Africa triples the use of gas for energy, you know how much it will have contributed in terms of global carbon emissions? Less than 0.67%. So we got to be realistic, pragmatic, for Africa will not be poor in an environmentally sustainable manner. We have to industrialize and create jobs. But we're doing so in a way that is green. Progress will depend on developed economies fulfilling their commitment to provide at least $100 billion in climate finance annually to developing countries. I thank the government of Ghana for its clear statement with regard to the issue of just energy transition and climate change. But I also now, as we now look from here to go to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, I want to thank His Excellency President El-Sisi, who will be hosting us in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you to the UK government for a fantastic COP26 that we had in Glasgow. Now, as we move from Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh, let's turn words into action. Let's turn ambition into real money that will help developing countries. Africa can, Your Excellencies, accelerate its development and cope with other challenges such as climate change, debt, insecurity, and the effects of Russia's war in Ukraine on their economies if we better leverage the special drawing rights, the SDRs of the International Monetary Fund. And I want to publicly give a shout out to my two people that I really think have done incredibly well in making that happen, to all of countries around the world, like Secretary Yellen of the US Treasury, who said we got to think big, and of course my sister, Kristalina Georgieva of the IMF. Africa needs to have a reallocation of $100 billion from developed economies, as agreed to by the African heads of state, and also at the Conference on Financing African Economies, hosted by President Emmanuel Macron of France. The African Union has called for a reallocation of the SDRs to Africa, with a portion of it going through the African Development Bank. We should use the SDRs in more pragmatic ways to support economies. Providing SDRs also through the multilateral development banks has several benefits. First, multilateral development banks can leverage the SDRs. At the African Development Bank, we can leverage the SDRs by a factor of 4 times. Second, the SDRs can be absorbed by the bank as equity, which will expand our lending capacity to countries. And third, the SDRs that's leveraged will be used to provide additional capital and financing to the development banks all across Africa as part of the financing in common that we are implementing together with the government of France. The SDRs can also be provided as concessional loans to the African Development Fund. Providing SDRs also to the multilateral development banks will be game changers for accelerated development of our economies in Africa. Your Excellencies, perhaps the SDRs could be given a different name, probably called Supporting Development Revitalization. That would be SDR. That way people on the streets will feel the effects of SDRs on their lives. As our esteemed shareholders, I would like to ask for your strong support for these efforts. Your Excellencies, dear governors, honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, nowhere is the need for additional greater financing more than the low-income countries and fragile states that rely on the African Development Fund. This year, the African Development Fund the concessional lending institution of the African Development Bank will turn 50 years. In 50 years, it has provided $45 billion in support of the countries that are here. I know we have an event on Thursday to celebrate the African Development Fund. But because it's a public event, I would like representatives of all the ADF countries, state participants, to rise. The countries that are part of ADF, we want to see you please rise. Thank you very much, because without them, there will not have been that $45 billion. Thank you to you and your governments. Your Excellencies, you can see African Development Bank Group at work right here in Ghana. Delegates, as you arrived in Accra, you came through the beautiful Kotoka International Airport. It was financed by the African Development Bank. As you drive right through Accra, you will ride over the four-tier Pokwase Road interchange, a masterpiece of quality infrastructure, the first of such in West Africa, and the second of such in the whole of Africa. It was financed by the African Development Fund. And Ghana used the funds very, very well. Money that was meant to do a three-tier interchange was stretched and used to do a four-tier interchange. Now, that's what we do. At the African Development Bank, we deliver great value for money. Mr. President, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of your government. Please give it up to them. And the minister. Please stand up. When I came, I told the minister, what is that, your last name that say it's twins? Atta? He said his name is called Atta. Mr. President, I said maybe you should be appointing so many Attas into your government, because Atta means twins, which means we get two for the value of one. Thank you very, very much. I wish to express my great appreciation to each ADF donor country. You have stayed with the fund. You have supported the fund. And your countries have been partners in a journey of hope of the countries that are supported by the African Development Fund. To give greater hope, to cope with increasing challenges, the ADF countries need greater resources. One way to achieve this is to allow the African Development Fund to use its accumulated equity of $25 billion to leverage $33 billion from the capital markets. Then the fund will be able to deliver more. The fund will provide greater leverage for donor contributions, a greater value for money for taxpayers from all of the donor countries. The fund will become more sustainable as it will generate more income. The fund will reduce debt of countries as it will deliver much lower concessional lending rates compared to the very high rates these countries get on the global capital markets. Then together, we will build a more equitable growth and development from the middle-income countries to the low-income countries and to the fragile states. No development of any country will be left behind. Your Excellencies, as I close, thank you for giving me a great responsibility as Africa. And I thank all of our 81 shareholder countries for giving me a great responsibility. In 2015, when I was elected, I was very clear. The job being the president of the African Development Bank is not a job for me. I am on a mission of service. When you all generously re-elected me in 2020, I said the same thing. I am on a mission. I don't have a job. My life is only useful to the extent to which it is used to improve the lives of people. And no greater responsibility for me as an African can be greater and placed on my shoulders than to fast-track the development of the continent of my birth. I am proud and humbled to be the president of the African Development Bank. Our boards are working, and they are effective and rigorous in carrying out their oversight functions. Our management is working. Our governance, control, and oversight systems are working. Our risk management systems are working. We are a very well-run, a very well-managed bank. We are a AAA rated financial institution, the only one in Africa. We have consistently maintained our stellar AAA ratings by all major credit rating agencies, even during the worst period of COVID-19 pandemic, thanks to your excellent support as shareholders. Your Excellencies, my boards of directors, my boards of governors, shareholders, we will tell our own stories throughout these annual meetings, great stories of our relentless work and efforts. Boards of governors, boards of directors, management, and staff toiling day and night to make the continent and our bank better. But we will not be defined by concocted, outlandish, fabricated, tabloid, horror movie made-up stories which some disgruntled people seek to paint about us, which are false, biased, ill-motivated, and completely baseless. Lies and orchestrated misinformation cannot be legitimized by the economist. We will tell our own story, not a story that some write about us, and our story is a great story. The African Development Bank was ranked by Global Finance as the best multilateral financial institution in the world in 2021. The African Development Fund was ranked by the Washington-based Center for Global Development as the second best concessional financing institution in the world in terms of development effectiveness. I am not in competition with anyone or any institution, but just to say, we are also ahead of either of the World Bank. And all 28 concessional financing institutions in all OECD countries. We will continue with humility to serve and to strive to make Africa proud. With our board of governors, our boards of directors, our senior management and staff, and our 81 incredible shareholder countries, we will build a much stronger Africa. A climate-resilient Africa. An Africa with energy security for all. An Africa that feeds itself and becomes a solution for global food crisis. An economically resilient Africa. An Africa well on its way to achieving Agenda 2063 of the African Union, the Africa we want. The Africa which, like a lighthouse, will shine in the darkest of nights. the Africa we all are proud to call home. Thank you all very much.
There you have heard it from Africa's optimist-in-chief, and Africa's global development evangelist. Thank you, Mr. President, for your moving speech. Maybe we will have the Supporting Development Revitalization as the new name of the SDR. And hopefully, all those responsible will see the vision. I invite now Her Excellency, Dr. Monique Nsanzabaganwa, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver a statement representing the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Madam.
Your Excellency, Nana Addo Dankwa,
To clean the microphone, I want to thank the Health Services of Ghana for sensitizing us on COVID and carrying out daily tests, and also want to thank Africa CDC for supporting the COVID protocols. Thank you very much for your work. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to now call on the police band for an interlude of music before His Excellency comes on stage. The police band. Thank you, Police Band, for such a wonderful rendition. And by the way, Madam Deputy Chairperson, thank you for your excellent speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor and privilege to invite His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, to deliver his opening address.
Your Excellencies, the Presidents of the Republics of Mozambique and Tanzania, Your Excellencies, the Vice President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, and the Prime Minister of the Government of the Republic of Rwanda, Deputy Chair of the AU Commission, the Ghanaian Minister for Finance, Ministers and Deputy Ministers of State from Ghana and other countries, the Governor and Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Chairperson and members of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank Group, President of the African Development Bank Group, the veteran former President of the African Development Bank Group, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps, delegates, fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to Ghana and to the 57th African Development Bank and 48th African Development Fund annual general meetings. As we say in Ghana, and you've heard it already, Akwaba. You're amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality. I hope by the end of your visit that you will agree with this claim. I'm particularly happy that I've been able to come to the opening ceremony of these meetings with my good friend, the highly respected progressive President of the Republic of Mozambique, His Excellency Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, whose state visit to Ghana has coincided with these meetings. It is good to see, too, the first female President of the Republic of Tanzania, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, and other African leaders from Côte d'Ivoire, Rwanda, and the Central African Republic also present to lend their support to the work of the bank. They and all of you are very welcome to your second home of Ghana. I believe that the choice of Ghana to host the meetings has everything to do with the special place she holds as a beacon of stable democratic governance in Africa, as well as the proverbial warm hospitality of the Ghanaian people. Indeed, these meetings, being held at a critical period in history, when Africa, like the rest of the world, is dealing with the twin effects of COVID-19 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, could not find a better venue than our vibrant capital city of Accra. I congratulate the African Development Fund, ADF, the concessional lending arm of the African Development Bank, on the celebration of its Golden Jubilee. To invest some $9 million, United States dollars, over the last 5 years, up from an initial $327 million in 1976, is nothing short of exemplary. Congratulations are very much in order. Permit me also to commend the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, for his extraordinary vision, passion, and leadership. The African Development Bank is now a globally reputable bank, maintaining, even in difficult times, its stellar AAA ratings, the only African financial institution with AAA global credit ratings. The African Development Bank was ranked by the prestigious Global Finance magazine as the best multilateral financial institution in the world in 2021. It is equally impressive that the African Development Fund was also ranked by the Center for Global Development in the US as the second best in the world amongst all concessional financing institutions, even ahead of the World Bank IDA and all the developed countries' 28 concessional financing institutions of the OECD countries. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second consecutive year I'm addressing the bank's annual meetings. I had the honor of doing so last year, albeit virtually. Our meetings today, which are being held in person here in Accra, represent a great relief following 2 years of unprecedented disruptions caused by COVID-19. In my address last year, I challenged us to prioritize 5 main issues. 1, work towards the debt action plan. 2, collaborate and work with the World Bank and the IMF on the debt service suspension initiative and the G20 common framework. 3, explore options for the strategic use of the special drawing rights SDRs to support Africa through the AFDB. 4, work with IFAD and other global institutions to promote the establishment of food security facility. And 5, promote the African Financial Stability Mechanism for greater financial market stability for Africa. As we speak, the case for adhering immediately to these suggestions is even more compelling. We're now confronted with the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which are compounding the emerging socioeconomic vulnerabilities which have been heightened by COVID-19. Since February, prices of staple food commodities have surged dramatically. Africa faces a fertilizer shortage of some 2 million metric tons this year, estimated at $2 billion United States dollars, according to the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, potentially creating a productivity deficit of some 20 to 50% in agriculture. Rising food prices disproportionately affect African families, as food consumes some 40% of household incomes, compared to less than 20% in the advanced economies. Energy markets have been significantly volatile, with dire consequences for households and public finances. According to the IMF, a $5 per barrel increase in oil prices reduces global output by around 0.25%. But for non-oil exporting economies in Africa, that figure increases to 0.6%. As a result, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has cut global growth prospects by 1%, and the World Economic Outlook, April 2022, predicts global growth will slow from 6.1% in 2021 to 3.6% in 2022, 0.8 percentage points lower than projected in January 2022. Amidst economic slowdown and rising cost of fuel and food, the cost of living is increasing. The immediate economic consequences, whether in the form of rising inflation, lower growth, increased inequality, and greater financial instability, are likely to permeate deeper as they coincide with weakened economic positions due to the pandemic and pre-existing and now elevated debt challenges. The debt challenges are compounding for us in Africa. In pursuit of policy autonomy, in the age of choice for economic transformation, our debt profile has changed markedly. According to UNECA, the debt to GDP ratio rose from 60% to an estimated 70.1% between 2019 and 2020, largely because of the COVID pandemic. 18 African economies have faced credit downgrades, even when all economies were suffering from fallouts from the pandemic last year. Amidst these challenges, we must be aware of our vulnerability to the monetary policy stance of the U.S. Federal Reserve and the risk of so-called taper tantrums as investors may exit our markets, further exacerbating the increasing cost of borrowing. At this moment, support for non-IMF program countries to alleviate the debt burden is limited. The initial facility designed to offer respite to economies with elevated debt challenges, the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI, has expired since December 2021. Beyond the DSSI, the G20 Common Framework promised a comprehensive solution to the debt issue. To date, the few countries that took on the associated risk by applying have yet to receive the much-needed relief. We look forward to how the Resilience and Sustainability Trust, RST, which requires that countries be in an IMF program, will effectively serve the needs of our countries. In these trying times, the IMF $650 billion special drawing rights, approved in August 2021, was meant to be of significant relief. However, based on the allocation principles, economies on this continent got some 33 billion United States dollars, about 5%. Moreover, the promise to reallocate some 100 billion United States dollars of the SDR allocations to our economies, which was agreed to at the Paris Summit in 2019, has so far yielded about 36 billion United States dollars in pledges as of April 2022. The strategic decision to make the AFDB the delivery vehicle for these SDRs must be pursued and achieved. Leveraging the SDRs 4 times as AFDB does will significantly boost resources for Africa's transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, the combined effects of the debt situation, rising interest rates, and rising cost of living are resulting in severe macroeconomic and financial instability. What is clear is that the resulting damage cannot be cured so easily with the limited fiscal tools at our disposal and national policy adjustments. Therefore, I reiterate my call for an elevated role for Africa's premier bank, the AFDB. Only at this time, I respectfully ask for a sense of urgency due to our mutual enlightened awareness. As a AAA-rated financial institution with an active portfolio of some 61 billion United States dollars in more than 142,000 locations, the AFDB is in the position to drive sustained transformation in Africa. It is in this spirit that I'm happy to learn that the AFDB board has approved funding for the $1.5 billion Africa Emergency Food Production Plan to support countries to produce food rapidly while delivering climate-resilient agricultural technologies to 20 million farmers, and thus leveraging this facility over 8 times. I'm also encouraged to hear that the right noises are being made towards establishing an African financial stability mechanism to protect our economies from future shocks. The irony that we have a history riddled with economic shocks, but are the only continent in the world without financial buffers, has to be urgently remedied. I'm persuaded that the African Financial Stability Mechanism will provide such protective cover for our economies, thus enabling us to counter effects of future pandemics, amongst others. The confluence of rising challenges and expectations require that together we act with sustained conviction. Our support will be critical to building the Africa we want, as espoused by AU Agenda 2063 from today. In addition to the pressing food, fuel, and fiscal challenges, we still have to ensure that, 1, the remaining 85% of the continent's population are vaccinated against COVID-19. 2, the remaining 60% of health facilities on the continent are connected to a reliable source of electricity. 3, the teeming youth, who are over 60% of our population, are better educated and equipped for the job market, i.e., to become a digitally enabled entrepreneurial generation. 4, the African Continental Free Trade Area transforms Africa with a combined GDP of 3.3 trillion United States dollars. 5, the fiscal and digital infrastructural deficits are addressed. And 6, the unrelenting insecurity and violence, creating about 2.5 million internally displaced people in the Sahel and elsewhere, are permanently addressed. The stakes could not be higher and clearer. To move towards resolving these, we must support the bank to do what a bank does, to mobilize and invest funds. We must activate a process that moves this bank from the corridors of billions to trillions, given the scale of the challenges on this continent. Ultimately, the AFDB must become the dominant financing institution for African transformation in the medium term. This means we must bridge and overhaul the financing gap that exists with other complementary institutions. For instance, the financing gap between the IDA, the concessionary arm of the World Bank in Africa, and ADF now stands at almost 5-fold. That is 15 billion United States dollars compared to the ADF's 3 billion United States dollars per year. It is now time to A, ease the regulations that shackles the bank from optimizing its resources. Amending the articles that precludes the ADF from entering the market to leverage its resources must be first-order priority. In July last year, the IDA of World Bank, the equivalent of ADF, priced a 10-year sustainable development bond that raised 2 billion euros. Subsequently, IDA's funding program expanded from US 5 billion United States dollars in 2020 to 10 billion United States dollars in 2021. Such is the demonstrated power of the market beckoning the ADF. With an ADF equity of 26 billion United States dollars, the prospects could be an additional 8 to 10 billion United States dollars, which could drive sustained transformation, especially for both fragile and states in transition on this continent. B, consider carefully consolidating the balance sheets of both the ADB and ADF to enable raise more resources. There are financial efficiency, policy, and administrative gains inherent to having a single entity with a consolidated balance sheet and harmonized fundraising and governance processes. Overlapping clients and majority of our countries requiring concessional access would enable this consolidation to be beneficial. C, sustained efforts to leverage private investments into Africa. The OECD suggests that the 2.5 trillion United States dollars financing gap for the SDGs could balloon to 4.2 trillion United States dollars. It points out that this gap could be filled by realigning just 1.1% of the 379 trillion United States dollars in global financial assets under management. AFDB must lead in crowding in these resources. And D, demonstrate foremost interest in the proposal by the AU to explore the issuance of security-indexed investment bonds to raise funds to address the root causes of increasing insecurity and poverty. With increased financial resources, the bank could recapitalize key African financial institutions such as the regional development banks, Afro-Exim Bank, Africa Guarantee Fund, Africa Reinsurance Company, and Africa 50. This will harness the collective institutional strengths of Africa for sustained transformation and will thus avoid the situation whereby, for example, the IMF, as of the end of 2021, was able to lend 41 billion United States dollars to Argentina with a population of 45 million people, compared to 34 billion United States dollars for the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, with a population of 1.14 billion people. Empowering these African institutions and engaging communities will be vital to addressing the socio-ecological challenge of our time, climate change. Beyond pursuing ecological restoration, the AFDB should foster a culture of proactive and risk-based approaches, away from current reactive and crisis-based practices. This should involve effective coordination, communication, and cooperation, driven by adequate finance and political will. And as the AU champion for financial institutions in Africa, I pledge my support in this regard. Given our peculiar energy challenges, the bank should engage actively the discourse on shifting to a more sustainable economic model without making African communities and nations worse off. The cost of climate to our common humanity keeps increasing, with our continent bearing a disproportionate burden, though we have caused the least emissions of 3.8%, with the Western nations being responsible for 76%. Yet, only 6 billion United States dollars out of the worldwide total of 30 billion United States dollars of climate adaptation finance flows to Africa, even though the United Nations Environment Program has projected that between 75 million and 250 million people would be affected by climate-induced water stress. Not to mention, financing COP26 compliance could potentially strand Africa's natural resources, including natural gas. How do we develop under such unfair circumstances? The bank must empower Africa to seek justice in the journey to clean energy in a manner that optimizes the exploitation of our abundant natural resources. The design and focus of a just energy transition facility are timely, as they offer material support for powering and lighting up Africa and still meet the targets of climate. We must light up and power Africa to enable her feed herself, integrate, and industrialize. We must ensure that our prioritized climate actions are consistent with our current challenges and aspirations as a continent. This will be a demonstration of the theme chosen for these annual meetings. We must avoid our natural resources being stranded in the upcoming negotiations in Egypt at COP27. The stronger bonds between ecology, and conflicts demand that a bold and holistic approach be taken. It is in that light that I consider the theme of these annual meetings both timely and appropriate. At the end of these meetings, Africa expects a framework that reconciles people and planet for peace. We cannot fail the people and the planet. Both must win. But for this to happen, Africa must win. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to move towards an economic model which serves our interests, not others. Profits from our resources have benefited foreign creditors for far too long, while we suffer abusive borrowing costs on the international capital markets. There is no basis for our economies being saddled with the so-called African risk premium, which translates into higher spreads than for our European and American counterparts, particularly when our resources were the catalyst for the economic advancement of Western nations. It is time we work to address and remove the structural barriers to our development. And we must also deal with tax dodging and illegitimate commercial transactions by multinationals, which account for 60% of the $88 billion United States dollars of illicit financial outflows from the continent annually, and other relationships which inhibit our development. I am comforted by the array of expertise available to us. Now more than ever, it has become urgent to take the necessary steps to transition us towards become a resilient continent. Africa must exploit her productive capacities collectively and build the capacity of her continental development banks in order to realize the Africa we want and an Africa beyond aid. Accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor to declare the annual general meetings of the African Development Bank Group here in Accra duly open. I wish you a very fruitful meeting, and may God bless the African Development Bank Group, Mother Africa, and us all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, for such a wonderful speech. And of course, we know you as the advocate for Africa without aid. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with that inspiring address from His Excellency, we have come to the end of the opening ceremony. We will now transition to the presidential dialogue, which will now be just one panel and not two, because time is fast spent. Before we go to the panel, we ask you to remain seated for the heads of states to reconvene, but for now, they will retire to the VIP room in preparation for the panel. However, let's make the following announcements. There will be a family photo after the presidential dialogue for the following personalities: Excellencies, heads of state and government, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, honorable governors of the bank group, and special guests. And then the photo will be followed by a high-level luncheon by invitation at the small arena. We're hoping to get this accomplished to be able to meet the time for the remaining programs of the annual meetings. I now invite His Excellencies, the Excellencies, to please transition to the VIP room while we prepare to move into. Thank you very much.
Wa TBC1 unachokitazama sasa ni matangazo mbashara moja kwa moja kutoka katika mji mkuu wa Ghana, Accra, ambapo viongozi mbalimbali wa bara la Afrika wakiwemo wadau mbalimbali wa masuala mtambuka wanashiriki mkutano wa mwaka wa Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika huko Accra, Ghana, ambapo sasa ni kipindi cha mapumziko. Viongozi wa mataifa hayo wanakwenda kushiriki mkutano wa majadiliano ya pamoja utakaohusiana na masuala mbalimbali ikiwemo mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Miongoni mwa viongozi hao ni Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, lakini pia yupo rais mwenyeji Nana Akufo-Addo wa Ghana, kuna rais wa Msumbiji Felipe Nyusi, miongoni mwa wengine na wawakilishi wengine mbalimbali ambao wamehudhuria katika mkutano huo muhimu wa mwaka. Sasa tusikilize ama tutazame makala hii.
Kubwa sana. Kwa hiyo sisi kama kampuni tulikuwa tunapata changamoto hasa kuhudumia wateja wote, ikiwa na maana wakulima. Kwa hiyo tulikuwa tukipita kwenye taasisi za kifedha kama benki kwa ajili ya kutaka mikopo na kadhalika, lakini kidogo imekuwa changamoto kwa sababu mikopo benki inahitaji dhamana, lakini pia gharama interest kwenye mikopo, riba ni kubwa. Kwa hiyo sisi kama kampuni tulikuwa tunapata changamoto sasa kuwa na uwezo mkubwa wa kupata hizi mbolea na kuwapatia wakulima. Kwa hiyo kidogo hali ilikuwa iko ngumu, lakini baada ya kuja kwa mradi huu hasa tuseme tumenufaika sana. Tumenufaika kwa sababu sasa yale makampuni ambayo yanasambaza mbolea yameendelea kutuamini zaidi na kuendelea kutupa mzigo zaidi ambao na sisi unatusaidia sasa kufikisha hizi mbolea kwa wakulima kwa kiasi ambacho wanakihitaji. Mimi kama manager wa kampuni ya Multilateral Traders nilipata nafasi ya kuiwakilisha kampuni kwenye mafunzo ya usimamizi wa biashara. Niseme yalikuwa mafunzo ambayo yametusaidia sana kwa sababu pale tulijifunza namna mbalimbali ya usimamizi wa biashara, utunzaji wa kumbukumbu, pamoja na utunzaji wa taarifa mbalimbali zinazohusiana na biashara zetu, ni namna gani tunaweza kutengeneza faida na vitu kama hivyo. Kwa hiyo niseme ni mafunzo ambayo yalikuwa ni mazuri sana na yamesaidia pakubwa sana kwenye kampuni yetu, na labda nishauri kwamba mafunzo ya namna ile yawe endelevu, yawe yanafanyika mara kwa mara, kwa sababu wafanyabiashara wanabadilika, kampuni za agrodealers wanabadilika, wafanyakazi kwenye makampuni wanabadilika. Kwa hiyo kuwe na kama refreshers training ambazo zitasaidia zaidi kwa hawa agrodealers kufanya biashara zao vizuri zaidi.
Is it okay?
Flooding and drought and COVID-19 related lockdowns are setting back our goal to feed Africa. Yet, in Ghana's northern region, an agricultural technologies program is defying these challenges.
If it was just for my efforts and capacity, I would have still maintained on my small-scale farming.
Jamila and other farmers collectively increased their plantable land by more than 9,000% in just 3 years. Ghana's success is part of the African Development Bank's technology.
Naam, hizo ni makala mbalimbali zinazoendelea kupita katika mkutano huo zenye kuelezea mafanikio ambayo yamefadhiliwa na Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika. Makala mojawapo ilikuwa inatoka Tanzania na masuala yanayohusiana na kilimo. Tunajua benki hii imekuwa ikifanya mengi katika katika maendeleo ya Afrika, kwenye miundombinu, kwenye kilimo chenyewe na mambo mengi mbalimbali, na hata mwaka huu bodi ya wakurugenzi ilivia kutoa kiasi ya shilingi dola bilioni 1.5 kwa ajili ya kuwasaidia zaidi ya wakulima milioni 20 kote barani Afrika kuzalisha zaidi ya tani za ujazo milioni 38 ili kukabiliana na janga la njaa ambalo linayokumba dunia kutokana na vita ya Urusi na
products. And what we have done, we have listed them and have put in place a list of incentives to tell people, if you come and want to invest in this subsector, you have this list of incentives, but you have also a time frame. Those activities have to be done within 2 years, not more than 2 years since the adoption. And that's a program we call Manufacture and Ability to Recover. And it gives people incentive from tax incentive and non-tax incentives. And so far, we have registered more than 90 projects in the manufacturing sector. And that's going to help and that's going to help to, to create jobs. And our plan and our projection is that that program is going to create more than 30,000 jobs in Rwanda. The third element is the subsidy we have given to the support to agriculture sector. As you know, we have been trying to attract young people, youth in agriculture sector, but to be able to attract, to make it attractive sector, you have to show people that that sector is profitable. And what we have done is to make sure that there is financing in that sector, and we're trying to put in place a project which will lower the interest rate to a single-digit interest rate. And that project is there, and at least people can know that if you go to invest in agriculture, you will have at least funding at lower cost. The second support to agriculture was the seed production. We have given ourselves a target that by end of 2021, Rwanda won't import again the seeds. Now we have achieved that program, and we produce all agricultural seed locally in Rwanda, and that has helped us to lower the cost of production, because we used to import every season. We used to spend more than 8 billion Rwanda francs by importing seeds. The fourth one, agricultural support, is we have seen that with this global crisis, we used to import fertilizers like other African countries. And we have decided to put in place now a plan to produce our fertilizers locally, because that is an input we need in agriculture. The plant will be complete, I think, from now 1 year. We have that plant producing fertilizers in Rwanda. The fourth element, which is an issue in the African continent, is post-harvest handling. You know, we have that number, which is really alarming, that on every production, Africa will lose 40% of our production is lost during the post-harvest management. And in Rwanda, we are trying to invest heavily in the post-harvest management process to make sure that the whole value chain is well managed. I think those are things I can mention so far about our recovery process. And I know we are lagging behind the time. I don't have time to give you the words, but
thank you very much, Prime Minister Ngirente. We're going to come next to President Samia Hassan, who is the first woman Vice President of Tanzania, the first woman President also of Tanzania, and you're very well familiar with challenges, having come to office as President during a time of national crisis. In the process of taking office, you've become an inspiration to women, not just in Africa, but all over the world. For the lack of a better word, you've attained rather a rock star status. At least that's my humble submission. And you're doing a phenomenal job in Tanzania. Since taking office, what would you consider to be the major challenges that you've had to overcome, and what solutions are you bringing to the table?
It's a difficult question, though. But the major challenges, when I came in the office, the first one, as you said rightly, that I was the first female in East Africa to be the president, and Tanzania particularly. So the first challenge was a trust, to make people of Tanzania have a trust on me that I can deliver, I can run the country the same way men did. So that was my major challenge, and so I had to prove to them that yes, I can do it, women can do it. Women can never fail. And I think within the course of 1 year, I've shown the women power that I led the country in the same way men did, and in some circumstances more than they did. So But then the second challenge was I came in the office when the whole world was grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, the economic situation worldwide wasn't good. In my country, the economy fell from 6.8 growth to 4%. So I had a challenging task of improving the economy. And as we are speaking, we have been able to grow to 5.2% this year. So my expectation is to go back to 6.87 by 2025. And the third was, as the economy went down, then my question in head was, where should I start? But then I'm very thankful to the Multilateral Organization, to the banks, specifically African Development Bank. They supported Tanzania heavily. They supported us in infrastructure development. Tanzania is well connected to the neighboring countries. The regions and districts of Tanzania are well connected by beautiful roads. But then they are supporting us on construction of the airports and aviation sector. They've been supporting us in agriculture. So with the support from FDB and other multilateral organizations, I've done well. Actually, due to COVID-19, IMF gave us some money as a bailout, economic bailout from the COVID-19 pandemic. And then I think most of the countries used that money for purchasing of sanitizer and those items required for COVID-19. But for me, I thought COVID-19 means the decongestion of the students in the classroom. Our classrooms had 100 to 120 pupils in one classroom. So I've been able to decongest them, and now I'm having 45 to 50 in one classroom. But then I thought COVID means availability of water. So I've taken that money and used them for supplying clean and safe water to most part of my country. And when I came in, the availability of water was about 72%, and I've moved to around close to 80%. And I'm expecting by 2025, I'll be 95 in urban areas and 85 in villages. So, but then I've also used that money for health, because COVID means starting treating people at the level of villages. So I've constructed about 350 health centers using that money, plus equipments, modern equipments, to the district and village levels. So I've done something which has never been done before. But my thanks to the African Development Bank, and I congratulate them for turning 50. And they say voices and stories. The voices have to be raised, I think, and stories to be told. So I'm telling the story about FDB, but then telling the stories and raising our voices wouldn't be enough. We have to raise our voice, asking the multilateral financiers to allow FDB to access to SDRs, because those are going to benefit Africa. We'll be close to get fund from our own bank for our own development. But then I was thinking that most global programs and plans should go in line with what we Africans are planning. And so through our own banks, funds have to be given to our own banks so that we can benefit from that. Yeah, thank you very much.
President Samia Suluhu Hassan, thank you very, very much. Creativity, innovation on display. We do have a panelist who has joined us virtually all the way from the Comoros. I'm trusting that we will not have a technical hitch and that we'll be able to go directly to the Comoros even as we speak. So we will go right now to His Excellency Azali Assoumani, the President of the Union of the Comoros. Are you with us, sir?
Tout à fait, je suis là avec vous. Et merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Et mon cher frère,
if you could just hold on a second, Your Excellency. I'm glad that you can. I'm glad that you're with us online. I'm just going to provide you with a question that kind of contextualizes things for you. You are the president of a small island nation that has faced tremendous challenges, particularly with regards to climate. My question to you, Your Excellency, is, are the resources that your country receives sufficient enough to handle your growing needs in infrastructure and across the board? How are you faring post-COVID?
Écoutez, merci beaucoup, mais permettez-moi de remercier mon frère président du Ghana pour avoir accepté d'abriter cette conférence et toutes les dispositions qu'il a prises pour sa belle réussite. Aussi, féliciter ma chère sœur Samia, encore ma voisine, aussi le président Philippe de Mozambique, qui est un voisin, d'être là avec nous. Et vous dire qu'effectivement, par rapport à la question que vous avez posée, c'est une question très importante, puisque d'une façon spécifique, les Comores font partie des petits États insulaires au développement, donc affrontés au problème climatique. Et le problème climatique est un problème international. On vit actuellement, aucun continent du monde n'est épargné par ce problème. Donc ça, c'est les catastrophes naturelles. Et c'est ajouter une catastrophe humaine, ce qui se passe en Ukraine. Donc c'est des éléments qu'on doit en tenir compte pour voir comment prévenir et comment trouver des solutions. De ce côté-là, effectivement, je me joins à tout le monde pour féliciter mon cher frère Adesina avec tous les efforts qu'il fait au profit de l'Afrique, particulièrement les Comores, parce que quand même, moi-même avec lui, on a un très bon partenariat, donc je dois le remercier et lui dire toute notre sympathie, la solidarité du gouvernement de moi-même à l'appuyer pour qu'il atteigne ses objectifs, et aussi lui féliciter des notes qu'il a sur le plan mondial par rapport à sa gestion. Ça prouve qu'il fait une très bonne gestion. Et la gestion qu'il fait de la base, effectivement, c'est au profit de l'Afrique. Et c'est pourquoi, effectivement, nous devons tous voir les voies et moyens de faire un lobbying au niveau de tous les partenaires bio-multilatéraux, comment ils peuvent financer la FAD, mettre à la disposition de l'argent à la BAD, pour qu'ils puissent, la question que vous avez posée spécifiquement, qu'on puisse trouver les moyens d'y apporter des solutions. Donc, en ce qui concerne le climat, effectivement, ça a été dit, l'Afrique, on est victime, puisqu'il y en a qui affectent le climat et c'est nous qui subissons les conséquences. Mais néanmoins, on n'a pas le choix, on doit gérer. Et c'est pourquoi cette problématique d'énergie renouvelable, on doit y prendre en compte. Et ici, au Comores, Dieu merci, nous avons de très bonnes potentialités, que ce soit en géothermie, que ce soit en solaire, que ce soit en photovoltaïque. Donc, de ce côté-là, il y a des projets qui sont en cours qui peuvent nous aider à avoir l'énergie pour essayer d'amoindrir un peu les effets de ce problème climatique. Donc, ce côté-là, aussi, je remercie les partenaires multilatéraux pour l'appliquer du point. Par rapport à la question spécifique du Covid. Donc, le Covid est venu en 2019, pendant que les Comores, nous avons lancé un programme qu'on appelle le Plan émergent des Comores 2030. On a fait une conférence à Paris et Ceux qu'on a invités, Dieu merci, ils ont fait de très belles annonces, mais avec Covid, on a été un peu plombé. Donc maintenant, on a géré Covid. Je remercie le peuple comorien, tous nos partenaires, parce que quand même, ils ont été à nos côtés, on l'a bien géré, et maintenant on est dans une très bonne situation. Donc, avant le Covid, nous avions une croissance qui a été prévue de 4,5%, et il est tombé à 0,2%, et maintenant on doit relever. En tout cas, on est dans la voie pour essayer de relever ce défi, et jusqu'alors le Covid, il est maîtrisé, donc on va aller à ce plan émergent. Donc nous avons une obligation, c'est l'autosuffisance alimentaire, pour essayer de pallier aux catastrophes naturelles. Quand on prend des pays voisins comme Madagascar, comme Tanzanie, qui produisent une autosuffisance alimentaire, mais le problème c'est qu'il faut les aider sur le stockage et la transformation. De façon à ce que si on vit ces catastrophes naturelles que personne ne peut dire quand et comment, et qu'on essaie de prévenir la pénurie. Voilà le problème que nous avons. Donc les Comores, malgré la petitesse du territoire, mais nous, on a un climat qui peut nous apporter à avoir une autosuffisance alimentaire, mais surtout nous avons des prêts de rente qu'on voudrait demander à ce que les entrepreneurs viennent ici les transformer. On aura une valeur ajoutée, on aura du travail pour les jeunes, mais écoutez, pour le problème jeunesse, il y a une deuxième question, c'est le problème de la sécurité. On ne peut pas se passer de la sécurité. Parce qu'on sait que ces jeunes qui ne sont pas formés, qui ne travaillent pas, ils sont à la disposition des rapaces pour les manipuler et faire les opérations terroristes et extrémistes de tous bords. C'est pourquoi de ce côté-là, c'est un palier qu'on doit prendre en compte. Donc effectivement, nous avons géré le Covid. Il faut prévenir ces catastrophes par le renouvelable, mais aussi avoir de quoi alimenter lorsque ça va venir. Donc de façon à ce qu'aujourd'hui, mais la deuxième phase, c'est la sécurité, c'est le travail des jeunes, on doit s'y mettre. Pour ne pas être trop long, je vais conclure par vous dire qu'aujourd'hui l'Afrique, on produit. Donc là, effectivement, on doit stocker ces produits, pouvoir les vendre. Mais demain, l'Afrique sera un marché qui va consommer, parce que la population va ajouter. Donc il faut qu'on se prépare pour cette consommation. Une consommation locale qu'on va produire ici, et pour cas aussi un import pour consommer. Donc de ce côté-là, on doit se préparer. Et je pense que nous avons les moyens, nous avons les moyens propres, nous avons les appuis, que ce soit multilatéraux, mais surtout encore, j'ai un appel à ce qu'on appuie notre frère à destination pour qu'il ait le maximum, qu'il ait le maximum qu'il faut pour nous aider, parce que son aide, il est pratique et concrète et on voit les résultats. Donc là, nous avons beaucoup de partenaires, effectivement, la Belgique, que ce soit la FMI, la Banque mondiale, l'Union européenne nous aide, mais quand même l'Afrique, comme la BAD est à côté de nous, c'est beaucoup plus facile de travailler, la preuve est là, et c'est pourquoi, encore une fois, merci, M. Adesina, nous sommes avec vous et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, President Azali Assoumani, again for the endorsement. The investor pitch there, tremendous potential in food and renewable energy. We'll come next to our next panelist, and that will be His Excellency Felipe Jacinto Inyusi of Mozambique. Your country also, like many others, is dealing with quite a number of challenges, but also the G20 has put in place a common framework to help countries address their debt situation. Mr. President, what is your country doing to address Mozambique's debt challenges in the light of some of the challenges that we're dealing with on a continental basis and globally?
Thank you, moderator. You know, in African Union, you are speaking in Portuguese, in English, French, Arabic. Allow me to speak in Portuguese now. Bom, a pergunta foi bem introduzida. Os grandes desafios do meu país, que é Moçambique, não só a dívida, porque a dívida é um desafio comum de todo o mundo, de toda a África. mas temos desafios como que os que me antecederam falaram sobre mudanças climáticas. Só para vos recordar que nos últimos 20 anos, o maior ciclone em África foi em Moçambique, que se chama Idai, onde todos viveram e destruiu o meu país, no centro do país. Tivemos o desafio da Covid-19, que retardou o desenvolvimento. Agora estamos com o desafio do terrorismo, que está a destruir uma parte do meu país, que é um conflito, que é um desafio enorme. Mas também temos a questão da transição de energia, que parecendo que é pequeno, mas é um problema que pode, sobremaneira, não ser bem tratado, dificultar o crescimento dos países, sobretudo os países em desenvolvimento, com novos horizontes, novas esperanças. Não quis falar aqui dos desafios resultantes da guerra da Ucrânia com a Rússia. Mas, concretamente, o que está a falar sobre as dívidas? Primeiro, a melhor forma de combater a dívida é não contrair muitas dívidas. Porque não é possível viver sem dívidas, porque não conheço nenhum país no mundo que não tenha isso. Mas o melhor elemento, como estou a dizer, é não contrair muitas dívidas. E contrair dívidas corretamente, se for necessário, de uma forma racional. E quando que um país não contrai muitas dívidas? Não contrai muitas dívidas quando aumenta a sua produção, quando aumenta as suas exportações e importa menos. Não contrai dívidas quando tem a disciplina financeira. Tanto tem que haver maior transparência, mas também os processos fiscais, a macroeconomia como é gerida por si só. Esse vai ditar com que as dívidas não sejam contraídas de forma irracional. Portanto, nós embarcamos nesta batalha. Ficamos agora num bom tempo onde vivemos à nossa custa e a solução foi sempre mais produção e, sobretudo, naquelas áreas que são tradicionais para Moçambique, que é a agricultura, que é a pesca e também os transportes. Nós temos os corredores enormes de grande impacto a nível regional da SADC, a partir dos seus portos, as ferrovias e as estradas. Então é preciso aumentar também, ou capacitar e qualificar essas infraestruturas. Boas estradas, boas linhas férreas, bons portos, e isso por si só faz com que o país tenha mais proveitos, tenha mais receitas do que os consumos e reduz a dívida. Portanto, neste momento, dependendo da sua pergunta, como foi muito direta, digo a disciplina financeira, mais produção e também incentivos para as áreas produtivas, neste caso o setor privado. Nós estamos a influenciar muito para que os momentos da produção no setor privado sejam enormes, porque estes investimentos por si só vão ajudar para que não se contraia muitas dívidas. Portanto, a pergunta foi tão simples e direta e também quero responder. A minha especialidade, eu sou engenheiro, não se dá muitas voltas, vai direto à resposta. Obrigado.
Thank you very much, President Nyusi. And even while we talk about that, we want to congratulate you also on the tremendous investments. You talked about investments and the fiscal discipline. You've put quite a bit of investment into the gas sector, partnering with the African Development Bank and the Africa Investment Forum, and pulled off in a very short period of time what potentially will be one of the largest gas production systems in the world. So congratulations to you and to Mozambique in that regard. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And we're going to come to His Excellency, the Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire, Vice President Kone, representing President Alassane Ouattara. Well, for 57 years, Your Excellency, Côte d'Ivoire has really been an excellent host for the African Development Bank headquarters, and it's been a beautiful, mutually beneficial relationship with more than 70 staff from, 70 staff from 70 countries represented at the bank. I understand from many colleagues that even when they go home, they cannot wait to come back home. to Abidjan. And that really says a lot about the impact of traditional Ivorian hospitality. So we want to thank you for that and for being the gracious host that you've been for the bank these many years. Just as it was with Rwanda, so it was with Ivory Coast pre-COVID. You had a GDP growth of about 6.4%. Again, that has taken a hit in the last 2 years. What is it that your government is putting in place to help your country recover?
Bien, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le modérateur. Je voudrais, en prenant la parole pour la première fois, que vous me permettiez de remercier le président Akufo-Addo pour l'honneur qu'il nous fait et l'amitié qu'il nous fait de nous recevoir ici au Ghana. Comme il a dit, notre deuxième pays à nous, en tout cas, compte tenu de notre proximité. Je voudrais aussi transmettre les salutations du président Ouattara, que je représente ici. Il aurait bien voulu être là, mais il n'a pas pu le faire et je pense en principe que ces salutations seront transmises à chacun des membres qui participent. Alors, vous avez posé deux questions en une. Premièrement, en ce qui concerne la BAD, qui est en Côte d'Ivoire, c'est une question sur laquelle je ne peux pas passer. Parce que si je passe, mon frère Adesina va estimer que je n'ai pas apprécié le fait qu'il soit à la BAD et qu'il fasse ce qu'il fait. C'est vrai que, vous l'avez dit tout à l'heure, la Côte d'Ivoire a toujours été une terre hospitalière et elle est heureuse d'avoir accueilli la BAD. Je le dis parce que cette ouverture est enrichissante pour notre pays et c'est quelque chose auquel le président Ouattara tient particulièrement parce qu'il n'y a que de richesse, que d'hommes, comme on le dit. Et si en plus, il se trouve que cette institution, dans son rôle et avec les besoins que la Côte d'Ivoire a pu exprimer, c'est quand même entre 2012 et 2019 près de 1700 milliards d'unités de compte que la BAD a prêté à la Côte d'Ivoire et cela a permis de renforcer de façon importante l'infrastructure dans ce pays. Je ne donnerai pas de chiffres, mais seulement des images. Si vous passez aujourd'hui en Côte d'Ivoire et que vous circulez la nuit, vous verrez que pratiquement tous les villages et tous les hameaux sont éclairés, même parfois quand il n'y a pas un monde extraordinaire. Et ça, c'est important. Si vous passez et que vous voyez le système d'adduction d'eau, l'eau courante coule un peu partout. Je crois que c'est des investissements sociaux très importants que le pays a pu faire avec l'aide de la BAD. Je terminerai par le programme social du président qu'il a soutenu et qui aujourd'hui fait la fierté de beaucoup d'Ivoiriens. Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour cela.
Visiwani umekuwa ukitazama majadiliano ama mazungumzo mbele ya meza ya duara ya viongozi mbalimbali wa kitaifa wa Afrika waliohudhuria mkutano mkuu wa Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika, na nilizungumza sasa ni makamu wa rais wa Ivory Coast Temokomele Tikone. Miongoni mwa viongozi mbalimbali, Rais Samia Suluhu Hassan ameshalihutubia jukwaa hilo, mkutano huo tayari na mazungumzo yanayoendelea sasa, na Akufo-Addo rais mwenyeji naye amekwisha zungumza. Rais Azali Assoumani amezungumza kwa njia ya mtandao kutoka Komoro na viongozi wengine walioshiriki. Na matangazo haya sasa tunayapeleka bungeni. Bunge la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania likiendelea dakika chache zijazo. Endelea kutazama TV1.